Hey y'all, I'm just quickly coming on here to share a little something I wrote. It's called When Shame Tells You to Hide. Desperation becomes dangerous the moment it shakes hands with temptation. I think about Adam and Eve. One decision in the garden echoed so far into eternity that heaven answered it with a cross. Humanity fell, and because of that fall, a Savior would one day come. Here's a really hot take of mine, and maybe this is because I love Genesis so much. I find it so fascinating that we have something from that long ago. I think Eve is a very cool woman to me. I just think she's so fascinating. With that being said, I believe that she was a faithful woman. I believe she loved God. But, as we know, love alone doesn't keep us from wondering. It's only loyalty that stops us in our tracks before making a bad decision. Because loyalty says, I made my decision and I'm sticking with it. I don't let looking back or compromise be of any value to me. Sometimes we don't fall because we hate God. Sometimes we fall because we slowly become fascinated with something that isn't God. That's how temptation usually works. It rarely drags you somewhere overnight. It simply gets you to look a little longer than you should. Curiosity becomes conversation, and for Adam and Eve, curiosity became conversation. And conversation became compromise, and compromise became a decision, and a decision became a choice. And a single choice became a story that changed the world. That's why our choices really do matter. But I don't think the greatest tragedy in Eden was the fruit alone. I think it was hiding. The greater sin, aka the second sin. Adam and Eve didn't just run from a garden, they hid from the very God they had once always walked with. Isn't that exactly what shame still does to this day? Shame convinces us that the one we need most is the one we should avoid at all costs. Here's another really hot take of mine. Shame can actually become a beautiful gift when you let it lead you back to God. Because if you feel shame after you sin, it reveals something about you. It reveals something about your heart. God's opinion still matters to you because you can't feel the weight of disappointing someone you don't value. If you can sin against God without feeling any grief, the greater problem isn't just the sin alone. At that point, it's your heart doesn't value Him. But here's the other most powerful part about shame. It can become a reason to be in partnership with God. Imagine you're a student and you're assigned the most hardest project of your entire life. You have two choices. You can do it alone. This project, you can do it alone, or you can be paired with the most perfect partner. And you guys, that partner is Jesus Christ. He doesn't just help fix your mistakes, He teaches you through them. He takes the very thing that made you hide and uses it to bring you closer to Him. The shame that once buried you can become the very thing that builds your testimony even stronger. That is so powerful, you guys. Conviction says, come closer, while shame says, stay away. But one voice restores relationship, the other tries, emphasis on tries, to protect guilt. Every time we choose shame after we have sinned, it's like legitimately handing Satan a shovel and saying, here, keep burying me. And we wonder why we are still suffering. See, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. One shovel of dirt doesn't seem like that much, but another follows and another and maybe one more, and eventually regret becomes silence, and silence becomes distance, and that distance eventually will become identity. Because eventually you'll stop saying, I made a mistake, And you'll start hearing yourself say, I am the mistake. That's exactly where the enemy wants you, because a buried believer rarely tells anyone where to find the living water. But hear me out on this. If you're watching this, you are not too far gone. Jesus still can create the most beautiful testimony. He is still writing it with you right now. The one voice that says you are too far gone is the voice that profits from you never coming home. A robber never steals from someone of no value. I live by that quote. When I was little, my mom had a vase, her oh so precious vase. It was from her wedding day. It was very fragile, and it was very delicate. And it wasn't just any other decor in the house. It carried memories. It was irreplaceable, one of a kind. One afternoon, I was casually throwing a ball around my living room, and you probably know where this is going. The vase shattered, and so did my heart. I felt so bad in that moment. I didn't even wait for my mom to punish me. She didn't have to. I punished myself before she ever even could. I immediately stopped watching TV. I immediately put all my toys away. I immediately isolated myself, and I was definitely not going to ask her for anything. I decided I no longer deserve any joy because I was ashamed. But here's the amazing thing. My mom never asked me to do any of that. It was just my natural reflex and the natural antidote that came with my shame. Because here's the thing about that antidote. The side effects aren't pretty. It keeps you hidden in your shame, and it doesn't solve anything. And although fighting against that natural reflex, that natural man in us, is hard, there's also a better antidote waiting for you with your name on it. So going back to my little story about my mom's oh so precious vase, my mom finally found me in my room, and she told me all I needed to do was be honest with her and apologize with a true heart, and that was simply enough. And we could have just gone about our day. And I wonder how many of us are sitting in rooms God never told us to enter. We're grounding ourselves while heaven keeps yelling out, "Come out already." We're trying to repay a debt Jesus Christ already paid. We're carrying a sentence that's already been canceled. Sometimes I imagine Jesus Christ already has a handwritten letter with your name on it. The subject line says 3 simple words. It says, I forgive you. Not I'll think about it, not maybe later, maybe someday, not after you've earned it. No, it just says, I forgive you. The letter doesn't stop there, though. It keeps going, and it says, I know why the vase broke. It wasn't because you were worthless. It's because the vase was fragile. Because, let me get this through to you guys. In studying in Genesis, we literally see in chapter 3, verse 15. God knew immediately when Adam and Eve sinned, He literally knew that there are going to be fragile things, like free agency, like all these other things. He knew that these things were fragile. And so He said, okay, I know that they're going to sin probably. I know that they're going to break these fragile things, because He knew before Adam and Eve had sinned and it became a fallen world, I kind of imagine things were like made out of 100% metal. Nothing was really fragile, right? It couldn't really be broken. And God made it that way. But then whenever they partook of the fruit, we had fallen, and now everything around us was fragile. Free agency was fragile. All the sins that we sin, why we've sinned them and why we break those sins is because they're fragile. They're really fragile things. But they're also some of the most beautiful things. That's why whenever Adam and Eve did partake of the fruit, it wasn't the worst thing in the world, because it gave us so many amazing things with it. As I keep going on with this letter, I think God would say something along the lines of, I'm not in the business of throwing away broken things. I'm in the business of making broken things beautiful again. Isn't that the gospel? God never specialized in only perfect people. He almost always specializes in restoration. So stop hiding. There's no need for it. The God you're afraid to face is the very God who's been searching in the garden, calling, "Where are you?" Not because he doesn't know where you're at, but because he wants you to know you're worth searching for. You are the real priceless thing at hand. One voice will always be there trying to tell you to hide. The other calls you home. You have to listen carefully, because only one of them still has nail prints in his hands.